Check out these amazing space news stories from this week. I hope you enjoy this edit. Don't forget you can catch each of these stories in a daily short on YouTube, and please consider subscribing and sharing this content if you enjoy it. There's a bunch of launch news today. First, this morning was supposed to be the first commercial mission for ESA's new Ariane 6 launch vehicle carrying a French military satellite into space. Unfortunately, there was a ground anomaly that forced the launch to be scrubbed today. No news yet on what the anomaly was, but ESA hopes to get it straightened out and attempt another launch in the coming days. At 3:30 Pacific this afternoon, you can watch Flight 8 of SpaceX's Starship rocket. The test will see an attempt to catch the Super Heavy booster back on the pad, while Starship will attempt the deployment of 4 dummy Starlink satellites before splashing down into the Indian Ocean. Tomorrow night at 7:09 p.m., you can catch a Falcon 9 launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base carrying 2 super cool NASA missions called Punch and Spherex. I'm going to be live streaming that launch, so join us for that on YouTube or Twitch. As you can see here, the Helix Nebula is spectacular to look at, but it's puzzled X-ray astronomers for decades. I was lucky enough to work on that puzzle in grad school and even published a paper on it in 2003. The Helix is a planetary nebula, a stellar remnant called a white dwarf surrounded by the layers of gas it's ejected that create the supercool clouds and filaments we see in images like this one. What's puzzled astronomers for a long time is the highly energetic X-ray emission we see coming from 2226-210, the central white dwarf of the Helix. Einstein and Rosat data were used to detect this unusual emission in the past, and now archival data from XMM Newton and Chandra might finally have shown us what's happening. The research published back in December in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society suggests that the X-ray emission is likely coming from a substellar companion accreting onto the surface of the white dwarf. To translate that into English, the substellar companion in this case probably means a large planet like a Jupiter that's been torn apart by the white dwarf and whose debris is falling onto the star and emitting energetic X-rays as it does. If confirmed, the authors note that this would be the first time we've seen a planet destroyed by the central star of a planetary nebula. Why do we care about this? Well, 97% of the stars in our Milky Way will eventually become white dwarfs, and in the far future, our own sun will become one too. Scientists are interested to see what might happen to the planets in our solar system when it does. Let's do something a bit different today and talk about some of the cool space-based games that I like playing. First up, Astroneer. This is a co-op multiplayer exploration game where you start by building a base, mining resources, and improving your technology before eventually launching yourself into space and exploring other planets. The multiplayer aspect of this one is what makes it so fun for me. Next up, Kerbal Space Program. You had to know this one was coming. KSP and KSP2 are awesome spaceflight simulation games with realistic-ish orbital mechanics. Build your Kerbals a rocket and blast them off into space. Maybe, or possibly end up burning up on re-entry or stranding them up there. Just make sure they have plenty of sandwiches to keep them going until you can mount a rescue operation. Outer Wilds is another really cool game of exploration. I still haven't finished it, but it's good fun and has some really neat puzzle solving. Space Engineers is another cool sandbox game that's fun to play with friends. Explore, engineer, construct, travel. What more do you want? Finally, Per Aspera lets you build your colony on Mars in a game that had echoes of SimCity for me. Terraform the surface, construct your city, explore Mars, and be careful to manage your resources. A few other titles I've enjoyed are Stellaris, Void Crew, Osiris New Dawn, Cosmoteer, and Space Haven. I'm sure I've missed a bunch of great space games. Drop your favorites down in the comments. The incredible Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 spacecraft are the only man-made objects to reach interstellar space. Launched in 1977 with the main goal of studying Jupiter and Saturn, the spacecraft also studied Uranus and Neptune on their way out of the solar system. Voyager 1 is now roughly 50 billion with a B kilometers from Earth and reached interstellar space in 2012, with Voyager 2 joining it in 2018. Power for the spacecraft is supplied by radioisotope thermoelectric generators that convert heat from the decay of plutonium-238 into electricity. The total energy power generated on each spacecraft at launch was about 470 watts. As time passes, the RTGs lose roughly half their power every 87 years, and each is currently producing a little over 200 watts. In order to keep the spacecraft operating and exploring for as long as possible, NASA has been slowly switching off some of the 10 instruments on each spacecraft to conserve power. In a statement released yesterday, NASA said it had turned off the cosmic ray subsystem aboard Voyager 1 on February the 25th and will shut down Voyager 2's low-energy charged particle instrument on March the 24th. The spacecraft have identical sets of 10 instruments, and the ones that were powered down first were those that were geared towards studying the gas giant planets. Voyager 1 still operates its magnetometer and plasma wave subsystem and the low energy charged particle instrument. Voyager 2 is still operating its magnetic field, plasma wave, and cosmic ray subsystems. It's amazing to see these incredible spacecraft continue their explorations of the galaxy almost 50 years after launch. Yesterday saw 2 big launches and a landing. Unfortunately, 2 of the 3 didn't work out quite as planned. In the morning, ESA completed the first successful commercial launch of its new Ariane 6 launch vehicle, carrying a French military satellite into orbit. Great news for ESA and congrats to the team there. Earlier, Intuitive Machines attempted to land its Athena lunar lander close to the moon's south pole. Unfortunately, there were issues in the final stages of landing, and as you can see in this photo, Athena ended up laying on her side at the bottom of a crater. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because Intuitive Machines' Odysseus lander met the same fate about a year ago. The team are able to communicate with the lander and are currently trying to figure out what science they can salvage. Finally, it was the 8th test flight for SpaceX's Starship and Super Heavy yesterday. The launch went fine, and the Super Heavy booster was successfully caught back on the pad after launch. Starship appeared to be doing well too, and then started to lose attitude control and telemetry and spinning before breaking up. Several airports were closed briefly due to the risks caused by the debris. I'm not really sure where this leaves SpaceX, as I assume they were hoping for far more from their 8th test flight.